Hey guys, NeuroTalkGaming here, back again with controversial topic. Modern gaming stories and why they often feel so bad and lackluster. Right off the bat, let me clarify something. I'm not here just to bash every woke element in the gaming. That's not really the core issue here. Instead, I want to discuss the issues that a lot of today's developers are leaning on tired storytelling techniques. And yet, there may be a more liberal crowd in the industry these days, but that alone isn't the main problem. What really prompted me to make this video was Sven Vinke's speech at Game Awards.
The Oracle told me that the Game of the Year 2025 was going to be made by a studio who found the formula to make it up here on stage. It's stupidly simple, but somehow it keeps on getting lost. Studio made their game because they wanted to make a game that they wanted to play themselves. They created it because it hadn't been created before. They didn't make it to increase market share. They didn't make it to serve as a brand. They didn't have to meet arbitrary sales targets or fear being laid off if they didn't meet those targets.
He made some points I completely agree with, specifically the idea that many studios have forgotten the simplest rule of great game making. Create something you'd actually want to play yourself. So, let's jump right into my first reason why modern gaming stories often suck nowadays. A lot of them are made by people who aren't truly in love with art of video game creation. I get it. Most of us have days where we're not exactly brimming with passion for our jobs, but in the art form like gaming, if you're just punching the clock for a paycheck, or if you're just making games for money, that lack of genuine excitement seeps into the final product. I mean, look at this way. You rarely hear timeless music from someone who treats composing like just another 9 to 5. Same goes for painting, writing novels, and of course making games, as any other art form. For a story to shine, you need that spark of creativity and genuine investment in the end result. Something you're proud to release in the world. But it seems like many companies, and even some individual devs, have lost the sight of that. They're pumping out products full of predatory monetization, DLC bloat, locked content, and repetitive gameplay loops, all in the name of short-term profits without thinking about the long-term implications. And let's be real, nobody truly enjoys that stuff. Not the developers and not the consumers. But here's the main part, guys. It's not just about enjoying what you do. Passion in game development, as I see it, also comes from trusting your instincts and having the freedom to create something risky or unique. And this is something you would see a lot on this channel when we look at the older games. When a dev team is not passionate or is forced to churn out bland formulaic stories to meet corporate goals, they end up recycling tropes, writing cringe dialogue, or just straight up turning their games into glorified slot machines. And you know, I get it, every business has to make money. But genuine love for crafting a memorable experience usually shines through in game story, its soundtrack, its world building, and hence, it makes a cult game that actually ends up bringing money. Look at the older titles that are legendary today. Many of them were passion projects that tried something new or took story ideas from devs who adored the genre. They might not have always been perfectly polished, but that raw creative energy is what gave them soul. That's why I try to spotlight some of my favorite ones to you on my channel. When you play a game made with real heart, you can feel it in every corner. Little hidden Easter eggs, witty lines of dialogue, side quests that blow your mind with how well they tie into the main plot. You can just sense the team's excitement in the details. Unfortunately, a lot of modern games are missing this spark. And this, I think, is because the people behind the wheel might see the project as just another bullet point on their resume, or perhaps just another way how to earn some money. If your game story is basically a bland checklist of trendy plot points, that magic just isn't going to happen. Now going for the second reason, while the first reason I gave might be old news for some of you, as you have probably heard it many times on some other channels, in my opinion, with the rise of more liberal teams in gaming, there is another huge problem. People either don't know how to write engaging stories within that framework, or they simply don't care. Let me explain where I'm coming from. I've always believed art, whether paintings, movies, or games, is supposed to challenge our worldviews, not just echo them back to us. I'm talking about making some genuine controversy, not just making something political. It's totally fine for games to address uncomfortable topics, even the ones we personally disagree with. In fact, that's how we engage with new ideas in a meaningful way. Think about it. We've become numb to violence in video games, but remember when that was a big issue of the day? People said violent games would ruin society. Well, obviously the world's still running. In the same vein, I disagree with the idea that games can brainwash you into certain political stance. If gaming violence doesn't magically convert you into violent criminal, then politically charged storyline isn't going to turn you into devout liberal or conservative overnight. Games might influence you, sure, but they won't mold your core identity unless you were already headed that way. Now, I'll be upfront, I consider myself more on the conservative side of things. That doesn't mean I have a problem with modern themes in gaming, at least not most of them, but what really bugs me is how poorly executed some of those themes are. Well, not actually some, most of them. Take Veilguard as an example. It features a character named Tash who halfway through the story basically says, "Hey, I've changed my gender identity." And that's kind of it. That's barely any build-up, no clue about their internal struggles, no real narrative arc explaining what led them to this realization, just an announcement and that's pretty much it. And that for me is the real issue, it feels rushed, shoehorned in and lacking substance. Let's face it, fantasy setting should be the perfect playground for exploring liberal-leaning storylines, or any kind of storyline really, in a creative and profound way. Picture this, you've got a companion character who's deeply uncomfortable in their own skin, and they're not so sure why. They open up to you about these feelings, and you set off on a quest to discover the root cause. Maybe some evil sorcerer cursed them at birth, or their soul is literally mismatched with their body. You unravel the mystery together, battling evil forces until you finally break the curse, allowing them to become who they truly are. That's a narrative arc with tension, growth and emotion. At least it can be, if you put some proper storyline there. By contrast, when a game set in a high fantasy world falls back on modern medical procedures, like showing scars from gender transition surgeries, it feels weirdly out of place. If your setting is full of dragons, healing potions and magical spells for every ailment, why wouldn't there be a gender transition spell or artifact too? Fantasy should be able to stretch these concepts into imaginative boundary-pushing storylines. Instead, we sometimes get bland, real-world references that clash with the setting's own logic. So to sum up the second point, I'm not per se against the liberal or progressive themes in games, but what I think is that they don't understand how to do it right. Build characters with depth, show us their journey, give the audience something to care about. Don't just tag on modern social issues with no narrative payoff. That's my gripe, lazy storytelling that doesn't deliver the themes that they claim to champion. So going to the third reason, let's talk about another problem in modern gaming narratives. The tendency for studios to aim at the widest possible audience, and in the process dilute all flavor out of what could have been a truly captivating story. It's that feeling you get when you play modern, big, shiny AAA title, and even though the graphics and marketing are off the charts, the story itself feels bland and comedy designed. Big companies nowadays worry about alienating potential customers, so they try to be inclusive in the least interesting way possible. Now, I'm not talking about genuine inclusivity or representation done well that can enrich the story. I'm talking about this bizarre phenomenon where developers won't go far in any one direction because they're terrified of losing sales or getting bad press. To be clear, it's natural for businesses to want to make money, but the creative cost of these safe decisions can be enormous. We've all seen it. Edgy plot ideas or unique character arcs teased early in game development suddenly get watered down before release. Maybe the protagonist was originally morally ambiguous, or at least we hope they were willing to go dark lengths to achieve their goals, but in the final version, they're generic hero with the heart of gold because apparently that does better with focus groups. It's not just about moral complexity, it can also be about worlds that were initially pitched as mysterious and greedy, but end up being sanitized into squeaky clean fantasy realm with no real stakes or tension. And it doesn't end there. The writing itself sometimes goes through so many rewrites that any individuality or passion the authors had put there is stripped away. You end up with dialogue that sounds like it was generated by AI, designed to offend exactly 0 people. Any slight edge or controversial stance is smoothed over, leaving the final product feeling sterile. The result is a narrative that tries to please everyone but ends up resonating with no one. Instead, games should strive to explore truly memorable moments or challenging the player to think differently. It would turn the game into the experience that the gamer truly can discuss with his friends and challenge them about their worldviews. For example, let's take one of my favorite games, Skyrim. The argument between Imperials and Stormcloaks is still raging to this day. And sometimes you still see a YouTuber making another video saying that Stormcloaks were right or Imperials were right or something else in between. Instead, what we get is the games where we can almost feel the multiple layers of corporate sign-off stamped on every line of dialogue. We can't say this, we have to ensure we check these boxes. If everything is toned down and conflict is minimized, you don't just lose potential controversy, you lose excitement, intrigue and emotional depth too. Games are, at their heart, interactive experiences that can take kind of risks traditional media often can't. So when developers hold back, they're missing out on one of the gaming's greatest strengths, the ability to immerse players in bold, imaginative scenarios that push boundaries, whether that's morally, emotionally, or thematically. Ultimately, you want your game to stand on its own legs as an experience with real impact, something people talk about for years to come. A safe story that tries to not upset anybody might sell a few extra units at launch, but it will quickly fade into obscurity, overshadowed by the next big safe release. Real legacy in gaming comes from bold moves, and that means steering clear from cookie-cutter lowest common denominator approach. Take the same Obsidian, for example. They released Fallout New Vegas with all kinds of disturbing and controversial themes, and it is a beloved classic still today. And this game is actually the reason why I'm still hopeful for Avowed, since I refuse to believe that no one who made those good stories is left there. But we will see when the game comes out. Okay guys, hope you enjoyed my little rant. If you did, please let me know in the comments, and if you want to see more of my content, please consider subscribing. This is NeuroTalkGaming signing off. See you in the next one.